That's right. I
And
traveled with him for many years.
For decades, the world crowned Aretha Franklin as untouchable, the Queen of Soul, a voice so powerful it demanded respect, distance, and reverence. But behind the crown, behind the church hymns and chart-topping anthems, lived a woman who felt deeply, loved intensely, and never pretended she was made of stone. At 76, Aretha didn't look back to shock anyone. She looked back to tell the truth, not about scandal, not about gossip, but about connection, about the men who entered her life at different moments and left something behind that shaped who she became, both as an artist and as a woman. These weren't just famous names, they were chapters, lessons, emotional turning points. Some brought passion, some brought healing, some arrived too early. Others came when she was finally ready. This is not a story about headlines. It's about the hidden emotional life of a legend, and how even the greatest voices in history were guided by love, longing, and human vulnerability. Number 1. Luther Vandross. Admiration that never needed to speak. Luther Vandross never approached Aretha Franklin as a conquest or a challenge. From the beginning, his connection to her was built on admiration, quiet, disciplined, and deeply respectful. Luther had grown up studying her voice, her phrasing, her emotional control. To him, Aretha was not only a legend, she was a standard. What made their bond special was its restraint. Luther never tried to cross lines that didn't need crossing. He understood the power of distance, of letting reverence exist without turning it into possession. Around him, Aretha felt safe from expectation. She didn't need to perform strength or dominance. She could simply exist as a woman who was respected rather than pursued. Their conversations often circled around music, how to carry emotion without excess, how to let silence speak, how to protect one's inner life in an industry that consumes everything. Luther understood the burden of greatness because he carried it himself. That mutual understanding created a connection that didn't need labels. This wasn't a relationship defined by drama or longing. It was defined by dignity, and for Aretha, that dignity mattered. It reminded her that not every meaningful connection needed intensity to be real. Luther represented the beauty of admiration that asks for nothing in return, and sometimes that kind of connection leaves the deepest mark. Number 2. Stevie Wonder, joy without demands. Stevie Wonder entered Aretha Franklin's life like a burst of light. Where others brought weight, Stevie brought joy, laughter, playfulness, an emotional openness that felt freeing rather than consuming. Stevie never treated Aretha like royalty. He treated her like a friend, someone who could joke, experiment, and let her guard down. With him, music felt less like responsibility and more like play. They teased each other in the studio, improvised freely, and trusted instinct over control. What Aretha valued most about Stevie was his lack of pressure. He didn't ask her to be strong. He didn't expect her to lead. He didn't demand emotional labor. In a life filled with expectations, that absence was a gift. Their connection lived in shared creativity and shared laughter. Stevie understood that brilliance didn't always need intensity to survive. Sometimes it needed joy, and sometimes joy was the most healing thing of all. Stevie represented emotional freedom, a reminder that love, romantic or otherwise, didn't have to hurt to be meaningful. For Aretha, that was a powerful lesson. Number 3. Sam Cooke, the fire of youth. Sam Cooke was the embodiment of youthful passion, confident, magnetic, restless. When he entered Aretha Franklin's orbit, he carried the energy of possibility of lives just beginning to unfold. Their connection burned quickly and brightly. Sam represented freedom in its purest form. There were no long-term plans, no expectations of permanence, only intensity, curiosity, and the thrill of being seen by someone equally powerful. Aretha later reflected on this chapter with tenderness rather than regret. She understood that some connections are meant to teach rather than last. Sam showed her what it felt like to meet someone on equal ground, artist to artist, soul to soul, without hierarchy or fear. But youth is fleeting, and so was their moment. Sam's tragic death froze him in time, leaving behind a memory untouched by disappointment or decay. For Aretha, that chapter remained a symbol of what passion feels like before responsibility takes hold. Sam Cooke represented the fire of early life, the kind that burns hot, teaches quickly, and leaves behind both warmth and scars. Number 4. Barry White. Being desired, not idolized. Barry White offered Aretha something she rarely experienced, being desired as a woman, not worshipped as a legend. His presence was calm, grounded, and unapologetically sensual, but never disrespectful. Barry didn't put Aretha on a pedestal. He didn't treat her like a sacred monument. Instead, he spoke to her directly, honestly, and warmly. He made her feel visible in ways fame often erased. With him, she wasn't the queen of soul. She was simply a woman worthy of affection. This mattered deeply to Aretha. After years of being revered, she longed for normalcy, for someone who didn't shrink in her presence or hide behind admiration. Barry's confidence created space for intimacy that felt adult and mutual. Their connection was rooted in presence rather than fantasy. Barry understood that true desire isn't about control, it's about recognition. And in recognizing Aretha as a full human being, he offered her something rare. Barry White represented feminine affirmation, the reminder that power and softness could coexist without contradiction. Number 5. Ray Charles, a meeting of minds and souls. Ray Charles didn't need sight to see Aretha Franklin. He recognized her through sound, rhythm, and emotional nuance. Their connection was immediate and profound. Both had grown up with music as survival. Both understood the cost of genius, the isolation, the pressure, the loss of normalcy. When they spoke, they didn't need explanations. Their shared language was music itself. Ray didn't compete with Aretha. He collaborated with her. He listened deeply and responded instinctively. In his presence, Aretha felt understood beyond words. There was no need for performance, no need for protection. What bound them was mutual respect and shared vulnerability. Ray understood the loneliness that comes with brilliance. He knew what it meant to be misunderstood by the world and overburdened by expectation. This wasn't a connection defined by romance. It was defined by recognition. Ray represented the kind of intimacy that exists when two people truly understand each other's inner worlds. Number 6. Marvin Gaye. Love that wanted to stay. Marvin Gaye brought intensity into Aretha Franklin's life. Emotional depth, longing, a desire for permanence. Unlike others, Marvin didn't want fleeting connection. He wanted to stay. Marvin was vulnerable, searching, and deeply wounded. He saw in Aretha a source of stability and grounding, someone who could anchor him. And for a time, the connection felt powerful. But Aretha understood something Marvin didn't. Love cannot rescue someone from themselves. No matter how strong the feeling, timing matters. And Marvin's inner battles made permanence impossible. This chapter was painful because it carried real stakes. It forced Aretha to confront the limits of love. She couldn't sacrifice her own stability to save someone else. Marvin represented the danger of mistaking intensity for safety, and that realization marked a turning point in Aretha's emotional growth. Number 7. Isaac Hayes. Peace after the storm. Isaac Hayes entered Aretha Franklin's life when both had nothing left to prove. Fame was no longer a goal. Validation was no longer necessary. What remained was presence. Their connection was calm, unrushed, undefined. They didn't need to name it. They didn't need to justify it. They simply existed together, sharing silence as comfortably as conversation. Isaac understood Aretha's exhaustion. He respected her boundaries. He didn't demand youth or perfection. He met her where she was. This was love in its quietest form, not dramatic, not consuming, but steady, healing, real. Isaac Hayes represented emotional arrival, the place you reach after experience has burned away illusion. In the end, Aretha Franklin's story isn't about who entered her life. It's about what each connection gave her and what it taught her about herself. Behind the crown and the commanding voice was a woman who moved through love the same way she moved through music, honestly, instinctively, and without apology. Each man represented a different season of her life. Admiration that didn't need possession. Joy that healed without pressure. Passion that burned bright but couldn't last. Desire that finally saw her as a woman, not a monument. Understanding that went deeper than words. Love that wanted permanence before the time was right. And, at last, peace that arrived only after experience had done its work. Aretha didn't look back to justify herself. She looked back to tell the truth. Her life reminds us that even legends are shaped by emotion, that greatness doesn't cancel longing, and that the deepest connections aren't always the loudest or the most dramatic. They're often the quiet ones that help us survive who we are becoming. By seeing Aretha Franklin as a full human being, not just a voice, not just a title, we honor her legacy more honestly. Because her music didn't come from perfection, it came from feeling, from heartbreak, from growth, from love in all its complicated forms. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Our most powerful art is born not from certainty, but from the connections that change us along the way. If this story gave you a new perspective on Aretha Franklin or on the emotional lives behind the legends we think we know, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Which chapter of her journey resonated with you the most? We'll continue uncovering the human stories behind history's greatest voices because understanding their hearts helps us understand our own.